1993, Mario did not have a movie-ready story. They had to invent one. What they invented is bonkers, but it's more creative than I think people admit. On this week's Movie HighLow, we're talking Plumbers, Goombas, and trusting the Fungus. You never forget the first time you were kissed by a lizard. This is Annabel, Jankel, and Rocky Morton's Super Mario Brothers. Feels weird doing this during the daytime. Podcasting feels more comfortable by the cover of night.
It feels like we should be more G-rated for some reason. This is the family-friendly episode.
I don't know if this is actually the family-friendly episode, because as we get into today's movie, I think we're going to find that this was not very family-friendly, and families weren't quite friendly to this movie either. Today's movie is a movie I've been very excited to do ever since we decided that we were going to do this podcast. This is one that's been on my list for quite a while, so psyched that we finally arrived here. Welcome to Movie HighLow, a podcast discussing the best and worst that cinema has to offer. I'm Dom.
This is Dee.
And this week's movie is Super Mario Brothers from 1993, directed by Annabel, Jankel, and Rocky Morton, released on May 28th, 1993. This is a low episode. Says who? A bunch of assholes, in my opinion. The brain trust at IMDb currently rated at a 4.2. The consensus at Rotten Tomatoes has scored it at 27%. The experts at Letterboxd give it an overall 2.1 out of 5. It was produced for $42 million. This thing absolutely flopped, barely squeaking in $20 million domestic box office.
It really is crazy when you think about it. I mean, it's campy, but like movies like this have existed beforehand. Like I think our generation was ready for this, and I don't know why it wasn't well received. It's really baffling to me.
Well, we're going to get into that. For anyone who has not seen the movie, would you please read the synopsis?
Brooklyn plumbers Mario and Luigi are just trying to unclog drains, dodge corrupt construction crews, and maybe get through one normal day without being financially ruined. But when Luigi falls for a mysterious archaeology student named Daisy, the brothers are sucked into a parallel dinosaur world where humans evolved from reptiles. Fungus is the political resistance, and the fate of two universes depends on a meteorite shard that could disastrously merge both dimensions. Will the Mario brothers save Brooklyn from becoming Jurassic New York? Or will the ruthless King Koopa make a couple of monkeys out of these plumbers?
Monkey! So what are your associations with Super Mario Brothers? Were you a Nintendo kid growing up?
Yeah, I had two older brothers, and my oldest brother, I had these early memories of like coming home from kindergarten. He'd be in his room just like playing the first initial 8-bit Mario Brothers. I remember that, and that was like a period of time that was like every day. It was like that's what he'd be doing after school, is playing Mario Brothers, and just the way it looked and sounded, and that stuff sort of sticks in your DNA through the years. You know, you hear it, you see it, it's like it just brings you right back to childhood.
Do you remember when you first saw this movie, like what your thoughts were?
Yeah, I do remember seeing it as a kid. I remember a lot of those movies. I remember Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which obviously had Bob Hoskins in it, so every time I hear his voice, I think of that. But also Tim Burton's Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies, and like all of these movies, things that we grew up on, that like it was another one of those movies. To me, it fell into the same category, so it's surprising that it was, because I feel like some of those movies weren't panned, but for some reason this movie was.
Well, that's the thing. I've never understood the hate for this film. I loved it since I first saw it in the movie theater when I was 8 years old. As of recent history, there has been a slight reclamation and renaissance with things like the Super Mario Brothers movie archive, which was a fan preservation website. It collected all kinds of documents from the production history. These guys uncovered and preserved what is called the Morton Jankel cut, which was actually an extended work print that they got from like a VHS tape and were able to up-res it so that it was watchable. And it's also gotten a 4K restoration from Umbrella. So there's clearly some people who look back on this movie with some reverence or at least fascination by it. For me, and I'm not going to bury the lead on this, all of the things that I think would be considered lows for this movie are actually going to probably end up being my highs. Like we were just saying before, I kind of feel like kids' movies from the 80s and 90s were way more insane, way more edgy and fascinating.
But that's made them fun.
And this is no exception. This is no exception.
A lot of these movies had practical effects versus CGI, even though there is some CGI in this movie that's pretty terrible, but it's kind of funny. You kind of love it though, too, because it's indicative of the time period that makes you nostalgic.
I mean, people for this movie, they either seem to not really respond to it or conversely go after it. It never deserved the shit that it took. This movie is messy, compromised, and often ridiculous, but the things that people hate about it are also the things that I think make it very fascinating. Getting into the lows, we need to start with the first charge that is always leveled against this movie. The first low of this movie would be the story. The book on this movie always was, it was a huge departure from the actual story of Super Mario Brothers. Here's why I immediately call bullshit on that. What story?
Well, that's what I was gonna say too. Like from what you know of the lore of the game, it's like, okay, there's this little guy Mario. He's got a brother Luigi that's the second player character because they have to have a second player character. And it's like, yeah, there's King Koopa who's a bad guy. He's trying to save the princess, and Koopa's got some kids. Like that's basically the story of Mario. Like that there's not really like and save the Mushroom Kingdom on some level and the little toads. Like there's no full cohesive story to Mario to begin with. It's like it's taking this story and fleshing it out a little bit more. It's a reimagining of what the story might be. So what's wrong with doing that?
Maybe now, as we're sitting here in 2026, there's more Mario canon that exists. You know, there might be cutscenes from video games or extended lore, but at the time that this came out, what was really the story, like you're saying, other than it's a plumber, he jumps on Goombas, he collects coins and magic wands, and he saves a princess from a big turtle monster. This film was not working from some dense cinematic mythology or easily adaptable material. The story, in my opinion, is actually a high, because the fact that the filmmakers were able to extract this story from the source material, it's a show of extreme creativity that they could even come up with this. A meteorite hits the Earth, splits the world into two dimensions, one where mammals evolve and have the primary share of the resources, and another where lizards evolve and live in destitution, and a chipped off piece of the meteorite that caused the separation could merge the two worlds back together. That's actually a pretty interesting idea, and let's call this for what it is. Super Mario was doing the multiverse before the multiverse was a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all we see in movies now is the multiverse. They were kind of doing it before anybody else was in film.
You know, I'm just thinking of right now too. That's interesting, and it's kind of an aside to that, but doesn't really have anything to go against that. I mean, I agree with all that. Is the fact that Princess Daisy character falls for Luigi in this and not Mario. You'd think Mario would be the main like love interest, if you will, and it's an interesting angle because in the video game, like if you had to think that the premise of the game is that Mario's trying to save the princess from the clutches of King Koopa, so it's not really Luigi's just the secondary, tertiary, whatever character, and it's funny in the movie how they, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, it's like he's like
he's
I guess you would
more
imagine he's a younger brother character, and I mean Bob Hoskins. I mean, again, as soon as I hear his voice, I think of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and that takes me right back to childhood too. But he definitely has like an older brother vibe to John Leguizamo's younger brother vibe. Like that's clear cut. And obviously the Princess Daisy's probably not going to go for the chuggy old balding plumber. She's probably going to go for the younger, cuter one, even though, truth be told, they both kind of have an overbite, Princess Daisy and Luigi. But whatever. I mean, you know.
That in and of itself is a departure from the original quote-unquote story, I suppose. But at the same time, it's not sacrosanct. It's not like we're adapting the Bible here. This was basically a lunchbox was what this movie was. So the fact that people took it so personally that they felt as though the video game was not being represented enough in the movie, to me, has always been kind of goofy. It's kind of a goofy claim to level against the movie. The other part of that is what the filmmakers did carry over, again, was done in a very interesting way. So you got the rocket boots, which obviously are there because jumping is a big element in the game, right? So they bring the rocket boots over. Big Bertha, the woman, the corpulent woman, is clearly there to represent the big red fish that you see in the water levels. The Shy Guys, there's the whole thing at the construction site where the guys are wearing like the gas masks that are clearly supposed to be kind of like the Shy Guys from the video game. The flamethrowers, a little weird, a little grown up, but clearly like the firepower power-up that you get as Mario. Even the plot element of de-evolution, the king being turned into fungus, it's definitely derived from Mario 3, where the Koopa kids steal the magic wands from each of the kings in each of the castle, and Mario has to go and bring the magic wand back. The kings have been turned into something. So Mario comes back, he gets the magic wand, he turns them back into the king. The amount of stuff that they actually found a way to work into the movie is credible.
And let's not forget the set design when you get to King Koopa with Dennis Hopper, which obviously we're going to talk a great length about.
Yes.
He is awesome. It's kind of like a Nick Cage or an Al Pacino, or like he's got that larger than life performance, and it's just so silly and over the top. It's perfect. But the set design at his castle and stuff, it harkens back to the video game, those pointy little tiles and all that stuff. Like it's good set design, capturing how it looks in the video game. I think it's kind of spot on. It looks great.
Yeah, we gotta talk more about the set design. I just think that there was an actual attempt to try and take elements of the games and put them into a live action story. And this is the first time it had ever been done. This is the first theatrical live action adaptation of a video game. So my attitude, give these guys some grace. Stop being so precious with the source material. I loved the game as a kid. I played it. Even as an 8-year-old kid watching the movie, I kind of knew, I'm watching a live action movie of Mario. They're going to have to take some liberties. They're going to have to make some changes. 1993, Mario did not have a movie-ready story. They had to invent one. What they invented is bonkers, but it's more creative than I think people admit. The next low of the movie, it is dark and weird. Did the darkness bother you?
No, not at all. I mean, that's part of the sensibility I grew up on. It didn't feel like a departure from other movies that we'd seen up to that point.
I love how weird the movie is. I love the steampunk aesthetic, the world design that they have for Dinohattan. Anything that people criticized about this being too adult, when I was 8 years old, it all went right over my head. You know what I mean? I didn't realize there were actual strippers in the nightclub. At that point,
I know you freeze framed on one of those.
Oh, I look at this shit. But now I'm catching it. But as an 8-year-old, I'm just focused on my guys, Mario and Luigi.
I kind of love to come from an era. It's like, yeah, you know, like the world was different. Filmmaking was different. What could pass for children's movies versus what could pass for a children's movie now? Oh my gosh. It'd be so different. It'd be so different.
So that's what I wanted to talk about, because I think that what kids' films were in the 80s and 90s were very different than what kids' films are now. They weren't stripped of any possible offensive or objectionable material. Even trying to show our 3-year-old daughter, the never-ending story, I ended up having to like fast forward through the whole middle section of the movie. I forgot Artax Atreyu's horse literally dies in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Basically, I just showed her.
How could you forget that? That's like the one thing I remember in the movie.
I remember that scene. I didn't remember how early it happened. I thought that was something that happened later in the movie. It's like literally Atreyu leaves Fantasia, and it's like the first part of his mission, and the thing drowns right there.
Didn't she ask you what happened?
I had a fast forwarded. I basically only showed her the parts with the Rockbiter and with Falcor, because everything else, like the Gamork, the wolf monster, all that shit was a little too heavy. But that's the thing, like that represented children's entertainment back when we were growing up. You know what I mean?
That, I think.
Weird note that I wrote down just when I was watching it this time, when Mario and Luigi are arrested, the Mario, Luigi, Mario scene, the cop, there's like this woman's high heel, and then there's another cop who's like breaking a glass. He's like in the middle of a fight. Like, what the is going on in that scene?
My favorite part of that scene is the fact that the cop looks like he's so like, what? Mario, or Luigi, Mario? Like, what's going on with you? He looks at them like they're so strange, but it's like, what's happening with you, bro?
Dinohattan, people have often noted the Blade Runner influence. What I picked up on a lot this rewatch, actually I feel like a lot more of a Tim Burton influence on this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely see that. Because again, I grew up on the Tim Burton Batman, and I feel like flavors of that. Yes, I know what you're saying.
And as I'm thinking about just culturally in the moment, that might be one of the reasons why this movie was allowed to kind of be as weird as it ended up being, because Batman '89 was a big hit. Tim Burton was sort of in his heyday in this era. It would stand to reason that major studios would look at something like this and want to maybe cash in on kind of that weirdo Tim Burton element.
Honestly, that's probably exactly what happened. That's probably exactly, you're probably hitting the nail on the head right there.
I think the production design obviously is stunning. It's not quite the Mushroom Kingdom, but of course with the fungus all thrown around, it does still represent that element of the mushrooms. I love the Goombas. I love how expressive they are. I love that they're done practically. When I go back and I watch a movie like this that's over 30 years old now, and you see these practical effects being done, and it looks better than any CGI bullshit that's in movies right now. It just looks better. I mean, we just saw it recently in Project Hail Mary. Having the Rocky animatronic, having that be a puppet is so much more convincing.
I know, but you and I have always, and may that be on the record for all future podcasts, I mean, you and I have always, that's one thing, we disagree on plenty, but this is one area that we do agree, is that CGI in almost all cases is never better than practical effects. There are some cases like James Cameron, who uses CGI masterfully, that you can't even quite tell that it's CGI. That's how you do it correctly, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Even though Avatar, like, oh my God, okay, the whole thing's CGI, and like, whatever, let's not get into that. But for the most part, you and I experiencing a film, it's so much more real, and you can really invest yourself and dive in when it's a practical effect versus the CGI that, for me, especially in horror movies, oh my God, in almost all cases, hate CGI.
Yeah. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo as Mario and Luigi. Do you rank that as a high or low? How do you feel about them? Do they work for you?
They seem like an odd casting choice, but oddly also work together.
Yeah.
They're so different that it actually kind of makes sense.
Bob Hoskins, in my brain and in my heart, he occupies 3 roles, which are Eddie Valiant in Roger Rabbit, Shmi in Hook, and Mario in this movie.
Shmi and Hook. No matter what you say, the ultimate, the quintessential role for him in my head is Eddie Valiant in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
They both seem fully committed to the roles, and I think they have good chemistry together.
In an odd way, they do. It's not conventional. They're dynamic, and their pairing together is not something you would ever expect in a million years, but somehow it kind of works. And it makes you think, could they really be brothers? But
there's obviously a 20-ish year age difference. It's addressed at one point when they go on the date, Daisy. At some point, she's talking about how she was found, and then Luigi makes the comment, oh, you don't know your parents neither? So they're clearly not traditional brothers. At most, they might be half brothers. It acknowledges it without having to really give you a full explanation, which is good enough for me. It also gives you the opportunity to have the more older, gruff, realist Mario and the younger, kind of more optimistic dreamer Luigi. Like that dynamic pairs perfectly.
Right, even in the scene when he first meets Daisy, Mario's like, "Oh, go talk to her," you know, like.
And he has
but
to
at the
speak
same time,
for
it's like,
him.
I'm thinking about this car right now. I'm not thinking about pretty girls, but like, yeah, you're this young guy. Like, of course you're thinking about, oh, she's really pretty.
And then he has to speak for him, being like, my brother's trying to say is that he'd like to ask you out for dinner. Would you like a ride in the car? That type of thing. That dynamic totally works for me. I like them both in this.
Right.
Hoskins specifically, I think, is really giving something to the role. When Daisy and Luigi, when they're in the sewer and they find out that Scarpelli was down there messing with the pipes, and Daisy's like, well, you're a plumber. Like, what do we do? And he's like, I have the perfect idea. And you think he's going to fix the pipe. And of course, the next shot is there showing up to Mario, like, hey, we need your help.
Yeah.
And there's the line where Mario grabs the tool belt and he goes, strap your belt on, kid. We're going in.
I know.
I'm like, let's f***ing go. I am right there. I am right there ready to go on this adventure.
I did. I strap your belt and I have that as one of my highs because it's like, as a fan of Mario going into that, like when you see that scene and that line delivered, it's kind of like, yeah. Yeah,
it's awesome. You know? It's awesome. I also love that they don't get into the traditional costumes until like an hour in. It almost makes no sense when they get they just kind of discover them, and I'm not exactly sure why they put them on, but they withhold it for such a long amount of time that it kind of.
You're like, oh, if you look like
they're coding them. They're coding
Mario's
them.
collar's red, but Luigi's belt is green.
They're coding them throughout the movie, where like Mario's got
more subtle.
He's got the jacket that he's wearing the whole movie, and the collar on the jacket is red, and when you see Luigi's tool belt is green. So they're already kind of coding them for the costumes, but it withholds it for a long amount of time. So when they're revealed in the costumes, it is kind of like a special moment. Ultimately, I think both of these guys work. I don't think it's the most, like you said, it's probably not the most obvious casting. I can see how they eventually arrived at both of these guys for Mario and Luigi. What I cannot understand how anyone arrived at was Dennis Hopper as King Koopa. It's just a batshit choice.
But he's kind of perfect for that because he's so odd.
Well, he's giving such Blue Velvet Frank Booth, daddy wants the energy, you know, in this movie. It's bonkers, but it works for me. And it worked for me as a kid. I found him to be a threatening presence. I didn't have any associations. I didn't know Dennis Hopper from anything when I first saw this movie. Now,
that's what I'm saying. So Samantha Mathis, like I saw American Psycho years later. I don't think I put it together. And I'm like, oh yeah, she's the chick from the Mario Brothers movie. I
love the way they style his hair to look like scales. The addition of him being a germaphobe, I just think that's really, really funny that that Koopa's
a wall of fungus and you're afraid of germs.
Right. The way he kind of holds his hands up in front of him, kind of drooped like a T-Rex. All the crazy dialogue that they give him, the thing about mud. You know what I love about mud? It's dirty and it's clean at the same time. Yeah. Like it's just bizarre. The crazy line that he has when he says, little girls always remember the first time they were kissed by a dinosaur, and he does that tongue thing.
I know, it's creepy.
I'm like, oh my God.
I know, and that's a kid's movie. Again, it's a kid's film. I know.
It's insane. I like that his motivation is very clear in terms of when the meteorite struck and it split the world into 2 dimensions, the human dimension kind of got the wealth of the resources.
The apes, the monkeys.
They have that globe that he spins at one point where it's like, it's this one big city and then just this giant desert is all that's here. So his idea of like, if I can merge the dimensions, we can have the resources, and kind of using de-evolution as a form of control is kind of an interesting idea. I love, like you said, they're kind of campy, but I kind of love the effects of the de-evolution chamber. The idea that they put people in there and that's how they turn them into the Goombas. Yes. They de-evolve them backwards. And also Iggy and Spike, you know, when they evolve them, and that's the solution for that problem is they just make them smarter and funnier. You know, I know. Was she corpulent? Very corpulent?
Was she corpulent? Very corpulent?
Although Iggy and Spike would, to a degree, maybe be on my list of lows.
Iggy and Spike are supposed to represent, if you think about it,
the Koopa kids.
Exactly. They're the names of 2 of the Koopa kids. There's supposed to be 8 or 9 of them in the game, though.
I think there's 7.
But yeah, exactly. So they're supposed to represent Koopa's kids in some way. Not as goons or as Goombas,
and
per se.
They're funny at the beginning of the movie as like the dopey idiots, and I think they get even funnier when they get evolved and now they're speaking in like, you know, that overwritten smart dialogue.
Quite agreeable. Transmogrification. More like a transfiguration. A simple metamorphosis. Huh?
Enough.
The only thing that's kind of a bummer about them is the movie clearly doesn't know what to do with them, so we kind of lose them in like the 3rd act of the movie. They're just kind of written off, so nothing really happens with them. But
Colin, I have to say this because it's actually making me think of it. You know what it's akin to, and we talked about how this movie it comes on the heels of a movie like Tim Burton's Batman. Jack Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker. It kind of reminds me of Dennis Hopper, what he's doing with King Koopa, kind of reminds me a little bit of what Jack Nicholson is doing with the Joker.
And Batman's a good counterpoint.
Like a great actor that's a fucking zany, weird and out there that's doing this larger than life villain.
And it's a good counterpoint too, because again, at that point, you got to put yourself in the place and time. Batman 89, when it came out, was such a departure from what people consumed as Batman in the media. At that point, it was just this campy show from the 60s.
Adam West, right?
It took this material that was seen as childish and silly, Batman 60s, Adam West thing, and it turned it into this darker thing that people immediately accepted and liked. So why wouldn't that same formula work with Mario? Why couldn't he take this little bouncing Italian plumber guy who saves the princess and take that kind of silly childish thing and turn it into something a little bit more adult and more darker and edgier? So you can see how the thought process may have, again, come from the Tim Burton success. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's take a break here. When we come back, we'll do some real lows since we've already knocked out our highs.
We'll see you in a bit.
Mario, Scabelli's flooding the site.
We need your help.
Scabelli. Strap your belt on, kid. We're going in.
All right, so these are my real lows now. I have a lot of affinity for this movie. All the lows that I have here, I'm gonna kind of throw with a low velocity. The first thing is just, I think the opening animation sucks. For a movie that's based on a friggin'...
Oh, see, it's funny, I put that as a high.
Really? I think that animation
it's supposed to be harkening back to the fact that it's a video game, so to me, I like
But that's what my thought is that for a movie that's actually based on a video game, it feels like they could have tried a little bit harder on that element, especially that it was so brief. I kind of feel like that was kind of a goofy...
It's interesting. You thought it was a low and I thought it was a high, but okay, go ahead.
Lots of bad ADR throughout the movie. So there's a lot of shots that you can see where they're cutting to reaction shots of people, and then you're hearing characters talking off camera because they're stuffing in new dialogue to like help clarify the plot or, change things or make edits. There's a lot of shots that are like super, super wide. I think when they're first going down into the sewer, Daisy and Luigi, all this expository dialogue is happening because you can't see their mouths moving. It's very apparent. You can kind of see where the studio probably got in and got involved in the edit and kind of maybe botched some things. There's one shot when they turn Toad into the Goomba, when they de-evolve him and turn him into the Goomba. When they put Koopa in the chair and they push him in, they do the evolve thing by accident. He goes up, I'll kill those plumbers. You see that he slips on all this slime that's on the floor. It's a clean floor, and then all of a sudden there's all this slime on the floor and he slips on it and ends up in that chair. I guess what would have happened is the scene went on longer, and at some point Koopa de-evolved one of the guards into slime, and that's why that slime is there, but it was cut out of the movie.
I don't think I noticed that, but yeah, okay.
I'll show it to you later. It always pissed me off when I would catch that. Toad as a Goomba getting set on fire. Not much to say about it. Just hate it. Poor Toad. They put that guy through a lot.
Is he supposed to be dead after?
No, he gets set on fire, and then you see him after, and his shit's still smoking.
Oh, I don't remember.
Low. Hail Koopa.
Hail Koopa.
It's very clear that Dinohattan is a fascist state. I didn't need a literal line of dialogue where a character says, Hail Koopa. That was a little bit, if there was any content to object to, that was the one that was just a little over the line.
I mean, people say Hail Caesar, too.
Yeah, I guess so. That felt very Nazi-esque. It was just a little like, we don't need Nazis in our Mario movie. The Twin Tower shot. So when the partially...
No, that was creepy.
In Dinohattan, there's a partially destroyed version of the Twin Towers. So when they have the brief scene in the movie where the dimensions merge and you're starting to see Dinohattan appear in New York, you see the Twin Towers turn into like a decrepit version. And obviously the filmmakers could have no way of knowing, but it's just as an image, it's kind of a bummer to look at. As another low, I do think that the ending of the movie does get kind of rushed. You can tell by the end of the movie that they're starting to run out of steam. Koopa, when he's in that big bin and they kind of de-evolve him into a really shitty looking dinosaur and then they turn him into slime. It just kind of feels like it all happens a little quickly. And you can kind of tell that the budget and the creative choices are starting to get stretched thin by the end of the movie. The end credit song. This movie lands a 10,000% better if you replace the stupid Roxette song with the open the door, get on the floor. Everybody rock the dinosaur. That if you send the audience out in the end credits with that song, they're at least 10% happier than what they would have been when they leave. And the last low I have, and this is really the biggest low emotionally for me, is that they never made the sequel. Yeah, the ending scene, as cheesy as it is with, Daisy coming back in full commando gear saying, "You're not going to believe this," and Mario says, "Oh, I believe." That's the kind of the cheesy moment with the freeze frame. They smile at each other. It ends on this cliffhanger scene that's very similar to Back to the Future in a way, the way that they kind of cliffhanger it at the end, but it never got made because the movie was such a big bomb, and that was my biggest disappointment as a kid because I would have shown up to see Super Mario Brothers 2 if they made it. If you were a kid watching this, would this have scared you, bored you, or made you obsessed with it?
I think the Goombas are kind of creepy looking, the fact they have tiny heads and big bodies.
I love the way they
And I
look.
love the elevator scene. We didn't talk about that. The elevator scene.
Oh,
They're
God, yeah,
swaying,
we
right?
got to talk about the elevator
I
scene.
know.
That is
funny.
That is one of the...
That's comedy gold right there.
It's so strange, but it is a nice...
And it's all masterminded by Luigi. He's like, no, I got this. Like, watch. I can make them sway the elevator, the music.
I love the creature design of the Goombas.
But they're kind of creepy. I mean, I might have been partially creeped out, partially in love with it. I don't think I would have hated it, and I don't think I did. But I think those Goomba characters are actually kind of spooky looking.
Super Mario Brothers, 1993. Did it deserve the hate that it got?
Neither one of us think so. But what do you think? Write us and let us know.
I would not claim that the Mario Brothers movie is some great adaptation. I think it's just one of those movies that probably came out at the end of a wave of a certain type of movie that was getting made in the 80s and the early 90s. And because it was such a universally loved and known property IP, there was probably just a specific expectation of what it was going to be, that people were going to always confront it and have a hard time accepting it for being something so markedly different. It's not a great one-to-one adaptation, but it's a lot more creative, I think, than people really ever gave it credit for.
I'll kill that plumber!
All right, so next week we are finally righting a wrong from the first iteration of our podcast. In our first run, we did a sequel to a movie, and I remember during the time of recording that episode, you said to me, "Why are we doing the sequel to this and not the original?" Do you remember what that movie is?
Jaws.
That's right. Jaws the Revenge we did as our 9th episode with the 4th of July holiday around the bend. We're going to get to go back and have a conversation about one of the all-time great movies, Jaws.
The Steven Spielberg classic, and we're both very excited about it.
Yes, super psyched to talk about Jaws next week on Movie HighLow. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll check in with you on Amity Island.
And Amity, as we know, means friendship.
Bring me the princess.
You blew it.
And have her cleaned up. You know what I love about mud? It's clean and it's dirty at the same time. Monkey!